This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Satellite Book Club seminar series. The title of our talk today is New NESDIS Satellite Products for Wildland Fire Applications. And our presenter today is Dr. Mike Pavlonis, physical scientist from NESDIS STAR. Our facilitator today is Caitlin Rutt, lead meteorologist from WFO Lubbock, Texas. Before we get underway with our talk, just a few reminders. You heard the sessions being recorded. We will have, as usual, Q&A at the end of the presentation, and we encourage you to put your comments into the chat room where we'll field the questions from there after the main part of the presentation. As usual, please sign in with your full names. Most of you already are, and helps us follow up with you, whether there's a chat or a question. Please remember to check your spam folders, as some of the TowerS communications end up in the spam box. So there's a chance if you're not getting them, maybe they're going there. We are always looking for future presenters, so please contact the TowerS team at the contact information provided throughout the presentation. And the training team can help with training materials. Please contact Brian Mata, who can provide assistance and tips on this. Point you to existing materials as well. Thanks as always to the TowerS team, to Kashad Bowman and his coworkers here today, the Office of the Chief Learning Officer, NESDIS, that's both the GOES-R, JPSS programs, and other NESDIS organizations who work with us, as well as our facilitator today, Caitlin. We're going to have Mike get started in just a second, but a few words of introduction for those of you who might not already know Mike. Mike serves as the NESDIS Wildland Fire Program Manager. His responsibilities include NOAA-wide interagency coordination and implementation of new initiatives aimed at delivering impactful products and services for wildland fire applications. For the last 17 years, Mike has worked with NESDIS STAR, where he has served as the aviation science. He also serves as the aviation science team lead. He has over 20 years experience in developing novel satellite products and holds a PhD and MS in atmospheric and oceanic sciences from the University of Wisconsin at Madison. And he also has a BS in meteorology from Penn State. Mike, welcome back to the Satellite Book Club. Take it away when you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Brian, and thank you for the invitation to come back to the Satellite Book Club and tell you about some new activities going on in NESDIS in regards to wildland fire. As Brian mentioned in the introduction, we now have a dedicated wildland fire program, and I'm happy to be giving this briefing on behalf of the much larger team. And we have a program because we want to ensure that NOAA NESDIS satellite products and services support National Weather Service forecasters and other wildland fire users to the extent possible. This is a major societal challenge. It has a lot of attention on it, and it really requires a special focus area now. So what I want to do with this presentation is just sort of walk you through where things are at with products and services in NESDIS for wildland fire, and more importantly, where we're going with them. And hopefully this will start a larger dialogue with forecasters within the National Weather Service that we haven't interacted with yet already. Okay, so just a reminder about what you have in terms of NESDIS satellite products currently in your AWIPS for wildland fire. So from GOES-R, of course, you have imagery. That's ubiquitous. It's such a critical tool. And then you have the automated detections from the FTC algorithm that are available in your AWIPS. On the JPSS side, you of course have the imagery. You have the active fire detections as well, things that speak to fire weather as well. The NewCap soundings is an example of that. And just to remind everybody that these satellite detections of fire and the associated intensity or radiative power is what drives the smoke forecast within the high resolution rapid refresh model, and will continue to do so in the next generation of those models. So if nothing else, those detections serve that very, very important purpose. There are some new NOAA wildland fire initiatives I want to highlight here. starting with the forest team, which is the NOAA Fire Observation Research and Services team. It's an effort to really enhance coordination and collaboration across the NOAA line offices that work on wildland fire. So National Weather Service, OAR, and NESDIS, making sure that we're all very well aligned, and NOAA is an effective partner within the broader wildland fire enterprise. And that's important because there's a lot of opportunity to improve products and services in NOAA, and coordination across line offices is really needed to do that. Unfortunately, it was in place when the opportunity came along with the fiscal year 22 disaster supplemental and the bipartisan infrastructure law, which contained resources dedicated to improving wildland fire products and services across NESDIS. And there are over 40 new projects that have been started under these initiatives. And these projects are dedicated to, as I said, improving wildland fire service delivery. This would include IMET equipment, upgrades to IMET equipment, major upgrades to the satellite products, which I'm going to mainly talk about, but as well also the numerical models. And the data and the models, of course, are coupled, and so those are things that are closely coordinated. And then when you're developing new capabilities, you need a way to demonstrate them. And so in NOAA, there's a long history of successful implementation of thematic test beds, and there will be a fire test bed that is now spinning up. It's being led by OAR, but it's a multi-line office effort with OAR, NESDIS, or I mean with National Weather Service and NESDIS supporting OAR in that endeavor. And then I've already mentioned the NOAA NESDIS Wildland Fire Program, which makes our line office a more effective contributor to this overall NOAA picture. And so one of the major objectives that we have in the NESDIS Wildland Fire Program under these new projects that have spun up is the development of a next generation fire system. We're calling it NGFS, where it's a dedicated system for generating satellite-based wildland fire products and services. A dedicated system that will allow us to be more agile, more flexible, because we won't be coupled with other thematic areas and in systems that are very reliable, very secure, but are difficult to update. And so by having a more flexible model, we can do that, and we can make major transformative updates. We could rethink the requirements and make sure that critical use cases are being addressed. So this is a great opportunity to do that. This is not a conflicting effort with ongoing maintenance of the current operational product suite. In fact, the teams that maintain those products are very much playing a leading role in the development of the next generation fire system. So familiar names like Yvonne Chisar and Chris Schmidt are all very well embedded in this effort. And then all of this will need a better way to disseminate. And so there'll be a dedicated fire data portal for improving the way that users can access data. For internal to NOAA, of course, a lot of it goes to AWIPS, but there's a lot of partners who need access to this data as well, and they don't have access to AWIPS. We're looking at this through the perspective of outcome goals. What do we want to achieve? Not we want to develop product X or product Y, but what are we actually trying to achieve? And through extensive community engagement over the last several years and looking at various government reports, these are some outcome objectives we identified for the short to medium term. So it would include using satellite-derived information to help allow for more timely responses to a new fire incident, enhancing weather and fire monitoring in support of incident management. So this very much aligns with what IMETs have to do, or spot forecasters. Enable the development of improved smoke and fire behavior, or coupled fire weather model efforts, which is the scale of weather prediction is continuing to improve. And the more that improves, the more important it is to couple fire and weather. Simplifying access to fire products and information, and then improving long-term trends and patterns in fire trends and patterns. So I just want to highlight it. I'm not going to highlight all of these areas, but I'll focus a lot on the first couple here. And it all starts with improved automated fire detection. And there are, based on the use cases we want to serve, we identified some key capabilities that have to be served by a fire detection algorithm with this opportunity we have to totally revisit how we think about this and the use cases that we serve. So for instance, you want to be able to do early detection and have strong performance under difficult background conditions. So basically, you want to be able to emulate human expert analysis of the underlying satellite imagery to the extent possible. By definition, that's artificial intelligence. Doesn't mean you're replacing the human, but it's that force multiplier so that the machine doesn't get tired of looking at images or doesn't get distracted by other tasks. And so this really is a complement to what the humans are doing, not a replacement. And then taking those detections, automated detections, and converting them into events. So all pixels that belong to the same event should be grouped together, because that's how a human thinks of it. They're not thinking of it pixel by pixel, they're thinking of these detections as events. And then tracking those events over time. That enables near continuous monitoring of the fire intensity, advanced metrics such as duration of fire, things that are very difficult to do right now. And it also allows us to separate newly detected fires from ongoing events. And you need that if you want to do alerting on new events and hence help improve the timeliness of the response to a new detection. And then adding a lot of context to those detections by integrating independent geospatial layers with that. For instance, taking the NIFC perimeter and fire incident data and integrating with the detection so is this detection part of a known incident or is it not? What are the fire weather conditions in association with this detection? Is there a red flag warning? Does SBC have a critical outlook for it? Those types of data layer integration. And then also it needs to be maintainable and scalable. So sensor agnostic, and so that you have an algorithm that can be applied to GEO or LEO. New sensors come along. You don't need a large spin up time to apply it to those new sensors. And of course, if you're going to do this in operations, it has to be tolerant to bad data and disruptions, which is not something that is usually worked on by the research community. Okay, so this is an example of, let's see here. I think it's playing now. So this is an example of some of the types of detection and monitoring that are coming out of the next generation fire system. So this is just an example from the Creek Fire from 2020 in California. This was an explosive event, generated numerous pyro CB. And so you can see here, as this is GOES-17 imagery evolving, the red line is the fire radiative power as a function of time. And when you get above that white line, that's 10 gigawatts. And when you get above 10 gigawatts, you could almost bet that pyroconvection is going to happen. I'll play it another time. But what I want to emphasize here is that the progress that the team has made in developing here allows for this near continuous detection, even when there's smoke in the way, which enables the near continuous monitoring of fire incidents. This same detection capability also enables the early detection capabilities that I referenced earlier. Okay, I think there was a slide missing there, but we'll work around that. Okay, this is a big one. So for wildland fire applications, the geolocation information that go along with the satellite imagery are absolutely critical because this is a local scale phenomenon. So for years, users have been asking for terrain corrected lat lons for GOES-R imagery and GOES-R fire detections. And this has come to fruition now, thanks to Chris Schmidt at the University of Wisconsin, and thanks to Curtis Seaman of CIRA for this visualization. So what you're seeing here is a base map of Colorado. So you can see the Rockies and the elevation here. And then the next slide is a geocolor image from GOES-16. And this is the default navigation. No correction for no terrain correction applied. And if I flip between the two, you can see how there's a displacement. And for weather, typical weather applications, this doesn't matter very much. But if you're looking at fires, this displacement could be as large as 2 kilometers, and that's a big deal when you're trying to locate a fire accurately. Okay, so go back to the base map, and now here's what the GOES-R geocolor image looks like with terrain correction. You can see how much better that aligns with the base topography. Here's a really good illustration of the impacts of that. So this is the East Troublesome Fire in Colorado from 2020. So this is the ABI fire temperature imagery, uncorrected, no correction for terrain. And you can see that the heat signature here in the unterrain corrected imagery appears to be north of Grand Lake. When you apply terrain correction, that changes significantly. And unfortunately, the heat signature was in Grand Lake at this time, but with the terrain correction, you can correctly map that. And you could also do comparisons now between GOES-R and VIIRS much easier. So with the terrain correction, look at how much better the ABI imagery aligns with the VIIRS imagery. The VIIRS imagery is, of course, much higher spatial resolution, but you get much better alignment. So this is, this is really important for those local scale applications for surface-based phenomena like fires. Another thing to highlight is I think a lot of you are familiar with the LightningCast model. So on a fire incident, one of the most challenging forecasting aspects for an IMET is forecasting convection. Of course, it's a hazard to crews working out in the field, but it also influences the fire behavior and spread. So this is one of those key forecasting problems. And so LightningCast is a artificial intelligent model that utilizes ABI to predict where the GLM will see lightning up to 60 minutes in the future. So it's been used for a variety of applications, but last year a few IMETs reached out to us about using this in support of IMET or forecasting at fire incidents. So one of the things that we're working on developing is a user interface that is customized for IMET operations. So John Centennial, who does most of the work on LightningCast, and Justin Siegloff is helping him out developing this. And it's in line with what is being done, what John and Justin have already done for having a LightningCast time series interface for airports. So some of you may be familiar with this already, but there's now a layer in Real Earth where you can click on one of these dots and it brings up an interactive dashboard of the LightningCast predictions. And it also brings up a dashboard of the observed lightning along with those predictions. So for this upcoming fire season, we'll have an analogous capability for active wildland fire incidents where you can click on an incident and get the time series of the LightningCast predictions. This just is to give you an example of the timelines for some of these demonstration activities and new capabilities. So the improved fire detection is well, we're looking at a demonstration there in sometime within this wildland fire season. It'll be mostly demonstration ready by the end of May, but there's some details to be worked out there. The terrain corrected imagery currently is only available in a web mapping service as a test case. So working out the best ways to think about how to get user feedback on that. And then the LightningCast now casting, that's already available in AWIPS, GR2, and the web. So that is one that will be demonstration ready for this upcoming wildland fire season for sure. I also want to mention there's a lot of great work going on to improve how emissions are estimated from satellites, because this is critical to how smoke is forecasted in models like the HER and how it will be forecasted in the upcoming rapid refresh forecasting system, which will come online either later this year or early next year. And so the next generation of these smoke forecast models is expected to be better for a variety of reasons. The modeling gets better, but also the observations that are used to derive the emissions are getting better. So this is something to be excited about as well. And then finally, improving product access, dissemination, and interoperability. So the first two are not so much relevant to the National Weather Service, but they are relevant to the partners that work with the National Weather Service. So having data layers for fire that are accessible and interoperable with the platforms used by land management agencies and other key partners is critical for helping to support a common operating picture. So being compliant with open geospatial consortium standards, for instance, providing data services that are compliant with OGC standards, very important. Something that is relevant to IMET operations, when you're out in the field, the bandwidth may be limited. So thinking about how can we reduce the bandwidth requirements for getting critical satellite imagery and products out to the field. So this is an example of a VIR satellite image. When you're working a fire incident, you don't need the entire swath, which it takes up a very, very large area relative to the area that you're forecasting for. And so can we automatically cut out the areas that matter and deliver those and reduce the bandwidth requirements and make it easier to visualize in the field? So thinking of things like that. And then finally, also, how do you improve the uptake of LEO data? It's getting hard to keep track of LEO overpasses manually. There's a lot of low Earth orbit satellites that are relevant. So if we can automatically keep track of which overpasses are going to occur at a given incident and which ones are going to be most helpful, and then just sort of queue that up for the humans to look at, as opposed to making humans hunt down those overpasses. That's another thing that we're thinking about. Okay, so last slide. So just to summarize the NESDIS Wildland Fire Program, some of the objectives here: we really want to maximize the value of NOAA satellite-based products and services for critical use cases that we think have been underserved with our legacy requirements. Improve data access and interoperability, manage partnerships. NOAA is a key player in this problem, but not the only player. This is multidisciplinary, a multi-agency problem. And so we have to work with external partners on this one. And also to continuously engage with users and stakeholders. We're very open to hearing from you from the field, your ideas, your feedback. It's critical to ensure our development is aligned with your needs. And then just to highlight some upcoming demonstrations that we hope will be part of the NOAA Fire Testbed, which will just be spinning up this fire season, including improved fire detection and monitoring, terrain corrected GOES-R imagery, at least within a web mapping service, and the LightningCast that has a customized interface for IMET operations. So with that, we'll stop. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mike, for that presentation. It was super insightful, and I think we have some questions coming in. But I do want to encourage any attendees to stay on for the discussion. There's going to be some good questions, and hopefully Mike can answer some of those and help out with that. Also, there will be a feedback link. So it's just a short survey from the Satellite Book Club that will be in the chat. So feel free to head over there and fill that out, as that will help them out with future Satellite Book Club. And in a week from today, on Thursday, May 4th at 12 p.m. Eastern, so it's 11 a.m. Central Time, Doug Kahn and Patrick Saunders from WFO Cleveland will be discussing an unusual midwinter high shear low cape event across northern Ohio, and from back on January 19th of 2023. We also encourage all attendees to contact the Tower S team. That would be Lee Byerly, Kashad Bowman, and Emily Maddox, if you have any questions about the Satellite Book Club or for configuration of satellite products. And basically, now we're going to go on to some questions for you, Mike. So I'll start it off just to kind of icebreaker it. But will we be seeing any of these new products available in AWIPS? I think you mentioned that. But I also was wondering, with the demo that you're doing in AWIPS, are you planning on including local offices, NWS offices, the hazardous weather test bed? Like, how do you plan on kind of rolling out and testing some of those products in AWIPS? Yeah,
good question. So, I mean, still strategizing about AWIPS display capabilities. And so that will probably not happen this fire season. That will probably be something that would take until next year. In terms of involvement, you know, the fire test bed, they just hired a director and it's just getting spun up. So I think we'll get clarity on how to get users involved for fire test bed demonstrations, early demonstrations in 2023 in the coming weeks and the next month or two, as that really spins up. But I think the idea here is to have something that's analogous to the hazardous weather test bed, but also leverage, you know, it's a physical environment, but also leveraging like AWIPS in the cloud so that there can be virtual demonstrations, particularly early on this year where it may be hard to arrange those physical demonstrations. So I think there'll be clarity on that coming up on the demonstration side in the coming weeks and the next month or two. And AWIPS is going to require a bit of development time to get to there. Where do we need to be?
Awesome, yeah, understandable, and we'll all look out for that information to come out shortly. Another question I have is, how will these new products improve smoke forecasts?
Yeah, so I mean, currently in order to estimate smoke emissions, there's a lot of sort of post-processing of the products that has to have fire detection products and fire radiative power that has to happen now, because you know if clouds drift over, certain types of clouds drift over, the detection will wane or go away, and these new products they're not impervious to clouds, but they're far more resilient. And they also correct for the attenuation of the energy from the fire by clouds, smoke, and atmospheric gases. So the fire radiative power in the presence of those obstructions is more accurate than it would otherwise be. Again, not impervious, but more accurate. And so we think, you know, the emission models will be able to take better advantage of observations and have to do less sort of interpolation or assuming what's happening between the gaps that we see currently in detection.
Awesome, thank you. So we do have a plethora of some comments, questions. So we'll start off with the first ones from Dan Lindsay. He more probably a comment, but he said, although probably obvious to some, it's worth pointing out that the terrain-induced navigation error is 0 at sea level and gets larger the higher up in the mountains you go. And this is different than cloud parallax. I'm not sure if you have anything you want to add to that.
Nope, exactly right. Yeah, it could be as high as 2 kilometers, or it could be nothing at sea level. So for Western wildland fires, it generally is a non-negligible impact.
Okay. And we have a question from Becca. Have you tested the terrain correction up in Alaska? If so, was it useful, or did the parallax problem overwhelm any attempt at a correction?
This is yeah, we are correct. You know, the terrain correction does go out to Alaska. We haven't yet looked closely at the impact, but as their wildland fire season ramps up in May, June, and July, we'll have an opportunity to assess those impacts. But there's no reason to suspect that it won't improve the geolocation. You're still going to be dealing with an awfully large pixel, so you're not going to, you know, you're still going to really have to rely on the low Earth orbit data up there to help locate fires, but it will help. It should help even in Alaska with the GOES.
Awesome. So we have another question from Joseph. Mike, I was wondering if you're tracking the current ongoing wildfire called the Great Lake Wildfire in the I'm not sure the pronunciation, but it's a national forest in eastern North Carolina. It is rather large fire, 32,400 acres with 206 firefighters on site. WFO Morehead City is providing information of the fire too. Apparently he's down in Emerald Isle, North Carolina, and a couple of days ago, so Friday, Saturday last week, they saw a very large glow from the fire at night and pyrocb clouds generated by the fire during the day. With recent rain, the fire is less visible from here, but still burning. There was lots of smoke and ash to the northeast and east of the fire last weekend. So I think he's just kind of wondering, have you been tracking that with some of these new products?
Yeah, it's been detected and tracked. I don't know. I haven't personally, looked at the time series. I don't know if anybody from the NGFS team has. Somebody else may have. But yeah, it definitely is being detected and tracked. So the nice thing about the new approach that the team has developed is that an event like that gets not only detected, but it gets assigned automatically attributes that it is part of that particular wildland fire incident. And that opens the door in the future to users being able to do queries on data that are really meaningful to them. For instance, I would like all the fire detections for this fire incident, or all fire incidents in this county, in this state. So by doing, the integration of those independent geospatial but complementary geospatial layers with the detections, it really opens the door to some interesting data models for that can get around, that can improve upon, some of the access issues and challenges we have now, particularly with satellite data sets, with the huge volumes that we have, and it becomes hard to find the thing that you're looking for quite often.
Awesome, thanks, Mike. So Bill said you might want to mention your recent briefings to the IMETs, and I do want to put a plug in before you mention that there is a presentation coming up with the Satellite Book Club on June 1st of 2023, so about a month or so. It's called Day in the Life of an IMET, from Bruno Rodriguez from the Boulder office. So do tune in if you do want to see more talks about the IMETs and their lives, but I'll let you go ahead and answer that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. So I was in Boise last month for the Continuity of Excellence exercise for the IMETs, and had a chance to give a version of this briefing and interact with the IMETs, and there were some fire behavior analysts there as well. Of course, the IMETs and the FBANs work very, very closely together. So getting a much better understanding of the challenges they face on incident, where their gaps are. So fortunate to have that dialogue with the IMETs and get to know some of the FBANs. So very helpful. Thanks.
Awesome. So Steve Goodman put in, Mike, for your test bed evaluation, you might also assess the HER physically based lightning forecast up to 24 hours, which could be helpful for IMET situational awareness. He said to see his example in his ESSIC presentation this week, and he added the site for that in the chat. So
okay, again, yeah, thanks, Steve, for making me aware. But yeah, at some point there will be greater clarity on how new products can be evaluated within this test bed. So I would encourage the group that has developed that to keep an eye out, and I'll certainly try to remember that and make connections where I can.
Awesome. And we have another question from Dan. For the FRP trace that you showed, does it add up the FRP retrieval from each pixel within the fire boundary?
Yes. So it's a total measure of the intensity at a given time.
Okay. Hopefully that answered Dan's question. And looking at the chat, it looks like I'm not seeing any more questions come in. Becca said thanks. Great, thanks. Joseph also said thanks to your answer, and same with Dan. So sounds like you answered some of the questions all out there. Is there any other questions that anyone wants to ask for Mike as we head into this? I know a lot of these products are going to be very useful for operational forecasters and the IMETs. I'm just curious, is there any concern of like data flow issues? Satellite does slow down our bandwidth with AWIPs a lot. So do you think this might help that scenario, or?
Yeah, I mean, it could. So fire detection, automated fire detections and FRP are very lightweight because you can restrict the distribution to only the points or the events that were detected, and so it's just a small fraction of the total image. So in that case, yes. Imagery is so that's one of the challenges with terrain corrected imagery is, right, you may also, you probably want to retain the original imagery without the terrain correction. And so, you know, doubling up on the imagery volume would probably be not doable. So, you know, just brainstorming ways that you can optionally look at terrain corrected imagery while retaining the original imagery without increasing the bandwidth. That's, I think, going to take some thought.
Yeah, and hopefully maybe the test bed will help with that too as well at some point. Awesome. Well, I don't think there's any other questions. If you have anything else, Mike, you wanted to add, feel free to add it. Otherwise, I will turn it over back to Brian.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Right. Thank you, Caitlin, for your facilitation today. And thanks for Mike for that informative brief. Look forward to seeing those detection improvements and terrain correction. Really timely as well with your demonstrations about to start first on the web and then in AWIPS. So thanks very much to Mike. We look forward, announcement about next week, as Caitlin mentioned, look forward to seeing you again a week from today when WFO Cleveland, I guess we've got Doug and Patrick, will discuss the unusual winter high shear and low cape event that happened in Cleveland this past January. So please come back a week from now and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you. Thank you for your participation. And with that, we'll be signing out today.